Hi, I am Victoria Ludemann, and I just wanted to give you a bit of information about my history. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I lived there my whole life, and then I landed up going to South Africa, and I went to university in Durban, and from there I landed up doing a big OE overseas. Now, I was a tour guide a tour leader, they called them, for an overland company called Top Deck, which is actually where I landed up meeting my husband. But after a while, I started doing contracts for corporates. Okay, so I landed up working for Unilever in their marketing division. So I was based there for quite some time. And then I moved from there into an agency that put units in corporate environments. So it would be like Deutsche Morgan Greenfield, Credit Suisse First Boston, Morgan Stanley. And I ran web and print units on site in that corporate environment. And then I shifted from there into something that was called CW360, which was I don't know if many of you know, there's a Computer Weekly magazine that's over there, which assesses products that are really good against each other. So they review them, and they were big, and they were part of a company called Reed Publishing Group, which is the biggest publishing group at that time when I was in London, and they wanted to take their magazine online. So I ended up being one of the directors in that business before we landed up. My husband my partner at that time then proposed, and we landed up coming back here to Queenstown in New Zealand. And that is where I set up my web design company called Victoria Web Design. So I built that, and after some years, it was quite a different focus. It shifted from that corporate environment to tourism, and purely focused on tourism and small business, because that's what Queenstown is. It's a tourism town, right? So by virtue of that, it was predominantly that kind of clientele. And from that, with that burgeoning kind of environment, I landed up pregnant. I sold my business. We were probably the biggest player, if not, we were certainly one of the biggest players in town at the time. And I sold that. And after that happened, I got a little bit bored and I was like, I think I need to start another business, because I couldn't just sit still. I've just got ants in the pants, I guess you could say. And so I ended up setting up something else, which was like DIY websites. It's much like WordPress, where it was the New Zealand version of, let's put it that way. Effectively, I set that up. I took the idea, created the idea, because really what I wanted to do was help mums working from homes, because what I had noticed for many years in my business as a web studio guy is that we were actually losing a lot of custom because they couldn't afford to spend 5 or 10K for a website, and then probably the same amount in marketing them. So I was like, how can we help those? Anyway, long story short, I ended up selling that business. I do want to let you know that what I did manage to do when we did go to launch, I mean, we had customer care in India, we had in South Africa, we were in New Zealand, we were rolling out to Australia. So it was quite big, and we landed up and I was in charge of the marketing, getting 5,000 customers within 6 months. And anyway, there were a lot of health issues. I had 2 kids by this stage, and we were having quite a few, we now know, allergies. We didn't know that at the time, but I was on my knees, and effectively I said, look, health comes first. I need to give my kids some time. So I stepped away from that business, sold out, and found out it was all gluten, dairy, nuts, that kind of thing, And effectively, all those people, a lot of my old clients from Victoria Web Design then said to me, well, hey, you got 5,000 customers for you in 6 months. Do you think you could do the same for me? And I was like, well, I don't know, it's like it was a different market. It was targeting, retail, it was targeting domestic, it was targeting, selling overseas as well. But it is quite a different focus than, say, tourism. Tourism is all international, here today, gone tomorrow kind of scenario. You do get some repeat business, but most of it's international. So it's a whole different kind of marketing strategy. And so they eventually said, yeah, yeah, we want you. So I said, well, that's how the digital marketing agency was born. And I was like, oh, okay, well, okay, it's going to be X amount of hours. And once those hours are gone, that's it. So I was booked out 3 years in advance. Okay. And then, of course, I got a little complacent, if I'm honest, because it was like, it's crazy. I wanted time with the kids, so it really, really worked perfectly for me. But I think God decided that I needed a little bit of a jolt. So, as He did with all of us, and the pandemic came along, and my 3-year contracts literally all cancelled pretty much. I mean, there were a couple that stayed within 2 weeks of the pandemic hitting, because all my eggs were in one basket. They're all in tourism. So that was really interesting, because we then went from 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, this is not ideal, as I'm sure a lot of people, were experiencing as well. But I was really fortunate being in digital, and I was very blessed that I've got all this history. And the government came out with this plan of giving out money to help businesses pivot in tourism to a domestic market. So actually it worked out really, really well for me, because now all those guys that for years I had been saying, don't just focus on international, do have some kind of domestic drives, do target Kiwis, do all of this retail, do have a website, believe it or not, yes, there are people who like this. Do please have a website, at least have a website, and yes, we still have it. And, like restaurants that weren't, you couldn't order online and go around and collect. Well, they didn't even have a website, half of them. They were just so used to, buses of people arriving, they're getting off the buses, and then it's just there, and they just go. They've never had to. They just used to say to me, why would I need to market? That's pointless, So along came the pandemic, and that totally threw the cat amongst the pigeons for them. And suddenly I had people sitting on my doorstep going, whoa, that thing you were telling me about like 5 years ago, could you do that for me now and also get the results in not 5 years time, but like in the next month or two, ideally where I'm earning the same amount as what I was targeting my international. So it was full on, so there was all this funding. I became a regional business partners provider, which is government approved. They screen you, they vet you, they make sure that you know what you're doing, and basically it's consulting and reviewing people's businesses. So I had a lot of tourism businesses that I helped during the pandemic, giving them advice about what, you could do it this way, you've got these options, and this is the recommendations, and then it was up to them whether they would adopt them or not. Okay, so then, effectively that is pretty much in a nutshell where I'm at now. But then I was on this drive to do passive earn. I have been for many years, but I learned from the pandemic, don't be vulnerable. Like, how could you make yourself more robust? And looking to how can we have digital products, how can we, and I still have that burning desire, if I'm honest, to help mums working from home, small businesses wanting to be brave enough to take that next step. One of the things that I've got as well is a wellness business, a wellness practice, and because I'm a qualified wellness coach as well. And so there was this whole raft of other things that we were really needing to get drive and centered around in that area. And I was just looking at how can we take this all out to market in a different way, which is how AI came into being. I started looking at AI marketing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can so help, like literally hundreds of thousands of women if they're up for it, or businesses, small businesses, I don't really mind. As long as if I could help just like 1 or 2 people, I'll be thrilled, that I've actually made that difference. But I've got high aspirations. I want to get 1 million businesses, listen to this, I know some people are going to think I'm crazy, up and running with AI by the end of 2024. So I want to have AI as a tool that's actually going to start businesses, because there's a lot of issues around, is it going to take my job and whatever. There's going to be a knock on from that. There is, I know that. But for me, I was like, this is an opportunity to get up and running. It's so cheap. It's like, I hate to use that word, cost effective, I've been told, use the word cost effective, Vicky. So I'm going to say it's extremely cost effective. There you go. For anyone to be able to get their own website, write their own copy. You don't have to be a copywriter anymore. You don't have to be a designer. You don't have to. So all these things that were barriers for people to start their own businesses, I think they're going to fall away. I really do. And I want to be part of that journey. I want to help people be as self-sufficient as possible, as quickly as possible, like up on their feet as quickly as possible, and ideally making money. Even if it's a little bit, for some, parents, that's huge. That could pay for grocery bills. That could pay for the kids' activities. That could pay for a new outfit or a bigger birthday party or a birthday party. You know what I mean? Like, it would make a difference on a fundamental family unit level. And I think that is very exciting. I know there's a lot of reservations around AI, and understandably so. But honestly, I think it's all going to boil down to your intent. It's like, how do you intend to use it? And I also think, like, if your intent is pure, which it is for me, I just want to get as people up, as fast as possible. It's never been easier. I mean, I used to have my own agency. I know what it costs. I know what it costs now. It's insane. So for me, on a personal level, I'm like, let's make this happen. Let's have it where it's a force for good, where it's going to make a difference to every single person's life in a positive way. It may seem a bit dark in places, but like the pandemic, I saw people who didn't have a website, to, like, say, a restaurant, to having a website, to now be able to get orders that they could drive through, pick it up, because of all the restrictions and everything. They've now got websites and they've lifted their earning game significantly by having done that. Now, that's a big difference, okay? Now, I see this in exactly the same way. You can have this as a sideline thing and earn some extra pocket money. You've got nothing to lose. It hardly costs anything. It's like literally a small subscription every single month. Totally worth it. So my journey has been great, and I see that the future is bright. Like, we've got so many exciting opportunities here, and I think it's wonderful. And I would love for you guys to follow me, ask me any questions. I'm really very approachable. I'd like to think I am, at any rate. I'm not really ego driven. I'd like to think I'm not. It's more about, getting real with the real people. It's like, don't forget about us here, because that's what happens. The big guys get or the prestige people get all of this other stuff. And I'm like, well, what about the families? What about the tourism guys? And what about, you're just someone trying to pay the bills, that kind of thing. It's like, well, how can we get it where that's not, it's just them? It's like, we are, they're amazing, and I can show you how to do that. So that's my academic journey, and I'll tell you a bit more about my personal one if you're up for that as well. Okay? Namaste.